Here's the first part of the story with a fresh, dynamic, and intense style. I'll keep the tension high and make every part gripping. I was supposed to be out of town. That's what she thought. That's what he thought. The original plan was simple. My boss sent me on a 3-day work trip to Denver, some mind-numbing corporate conference. I packed my bags, kissed Jenna goodbye, and drove off like the oblivious fool I was. But an hour into the drive, I got a call. Conference canceled due to some electrical issue at the venue. I should have called Jenna right then and there. I should have told her I was coming home. But something held me back. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the nagging feeling in the back of my head. Or maybe it was just dumb luck. I turned the car around and headed home without a word. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked normal. Her car was parked where it always was. The house was quiet. The curtains were drawn. But then I noticed something. Our porch light was off. Jenna had a habit. She always left the porch light on when she was home alone. Said it made her feel safer. But tonight, darkness. Like she wasn't expecting anyone to return. I stepped out of the car, moving quietly, cautiously. First, I laughed at myself. What the hell am I sneaking around for? It's my own damn house. But something told me not to go through the front door. Instead, I walked around to the side window, the one facing the living room. That's when I saw it. Jenna, half-dressed, on the couch, straddling a man. My brain short-circuited. It was like watching a movie in slow motion. Her hands were on his shoulders. Her head tilted back as she laughed at something he whispered in her ear. Then he moved, and I saw his face. And my stomach dropped. It wasn't some random guy. It wasn't a coworker. It wasn't even an old boyfriend. It was Rick, my stepfather. Do you want me to continue? I don't remember how long I stood there. Seconds? Minutes? My entire sense of time shattered the moment I saw him. Rick, sitting on my couch with my wife on top of him, laughing like it was the most normal thing in the world. I couldn't move. My body refused to cooperate. It was like my brain needed extra time to process the sheer insanity of what I was looking at. It didn't make sense. None of it did. This wasn't just some random betrayal. This was a betrayal stacked on top of another, so twisted and messed up that it almost felt like a sick joke. Rick had been in my life since I was 13. My mom married him after my dad passed away. And while we were never close, I never hated the guy. He was just there. A stepfather in name only, a man I saw at holiday dinners and family events but never built any real bond with. And now, here he was on my couch with my wife, acting like a goddamn king in my home. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to move. I backed away from the window, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. My first instinct was to burst through the door and start demanding answers. But then something made me stop. I didn't just want answers. I wanted the truth. And if I walked in there right now, they'd just lie. I knew Jenna. She was a master manipulator. She'd spin some ridiculous story, try to gaslight me, maybe even make me feel guilty somehow. And Rick, that smug son of a bitch, would probably just sit there and let her do the talking. No, if I was going to confront them, I needed to catch them first. I pulled out my phone, hands still trembling, and pressed record. Then, as quietly as possible, I crept up to the front door. It was unlocked. That alone made my stomach turn. Jenna always locked the door when she was home alone. It was a habit, something she'd done since we first moved in together. But now she didn't bother. Because in her mind, she wasn't alone. I pushed the door open an inch, just enough to hear them. Jenna's voice drifted through the hallway, light and teasing. "Oh my God, Rick, stop," she giggled, her voice dripping with fake innocence. "If Mark ever found out, he'd kill us." Rick's voice was lower, smug. "Relax, sweetheart. He's halfway to Denver by now." Sweetheart. He called my wife sweetheart. I gripped my phone so tight I thought I'd snap it in half. Jenna sighed dramatically. "I still feel bad, you know? I mean, he's so good to me. I don't want to hurt him." I felt a flicker of hope, like maybe, just maybe, there was some part of her that still respected me. But then Rick laughed. A deep, condescending laugh. "Oh, please," he said. "If you really felt bad, you wouldn't be sitting on my lap right now." Silence. Then Jenna laughed too. And that was it. That was all I needed to hear. I shoved the door open, stepping into the living room before either of them could react. Jenna's head snapped toward me, eyes wide, her face draining of color so fast it was almost comical. Rick froze, his hands still on her waist, his mouth slightly open like his brain hadn't caught up yet. For a few seconds, none of us spoke. Then Jenna did exactly what I expected. She lied. "Mark!" she gasped, scrambling off Rick's lap like she could somehow erase what I just saw. "Oh my God! This isn't what it looks like." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Not what it looks like?" I held up my phone, the screen still glowing from the recording. "I've got every word you just said, Jenna. Every single word." Her eyes darted to the phone, then back to me. "Babe, Rick," to my utter disbelief, grinned. He leaned back against the couch, stretching his arms out like he had all the time in the world. "Well," he said, "this is awkward." I snapped. I didn't hit him, I wanted to, but I wasn't about to let him drag me down to his level. Instead, I turned to Jenna, my voice low, shaking with fury. "You felt bad, huh?" I said, my fingers tightening around my phone. "You didn't want to hurt me?" I took a step closer, forcing her to look me in the eye. "Tell me, Jenna, how long?" She swallowed hard, her lips parting like she was about to speak. But nothing came out. Rick, the absolute piece of garbage that he was, chuckled. "Come on, Jenna. Might as well tell him." I spun on him so fast he actually flinched. "You shut the hell up," I snarled. "I swear to God, Rick, if you say one more word, I'll—" Jenna snapped. "Oh, just stop," she yelled, throwing her hands up. "What do you want me to say, Mark? Huh? That I'm sorry? That it was a mistake? Would that make you feel better?" I stared at her, my entire body shaking with rage. "You don't get to play the victim here." She crossed her arms. "And what do you want me to do about it now? What's done is done." I almost laughed at the sheer audacity. "What's done is done?" I repeated. "That's it? That's all you have to say to me?" Rick stood up, straightening his shirt like he was getting ready to leave. "Well, this has been fun, but I should probably get going." I stepped in front of him, blocking the exit. "Oh no, you're not going anywhere." For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Unease. Jenna scoffed. "Jesus, Mark. What? Are you gonna hold him hostage?" I ignored her. My eyes were locked onto Rick's. "Tell me something," I said, my voice eerily calm. "How long have you been sneaking around with my wife, Rick?" Rick exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "Look, kid, don't you dare call me that." Silence. Jenna suddenly turned defensive. "Oh, please, Mark, don't act like you're so perfect. Like you never did anything wrong in this marriage." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She folded her arms. "Maybe if you actually paid attention to me, this wouldn't have happened." I felt something inside me snap. Not just anger, something deeper. Disgust. Pure, unfiltered disgust. Rick shifted uncomfortably. "Look, maybe we should all just take a breath." "Get out," I said. Jenna blinked. "What?" I turned to her. "You heard me. Get both of you." Rick hesitated. "Mark, let's be reasonable." "I swear to God, Rick, if you don't get out of my house in the next 30 seconds, you'll regret it." He studied me for a moment, then, like the coward he was, he backed off. He grabbed his jacket, gave Jenna one last look, then hurried out the door. Jenna stayed put. "You can't just throw me out," she said, her voice quieter now. I met her gaze, my voice cold. "Watch me." And just like that, the woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved, became nothing more than a stranger standing in my living room. And I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Jenna stood there like a statue, her mouth slightly open, trying to decide whether to fight or beg. I could see the gears turning in her head. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She was just calculating, trying to figure out how to manipulate the situation, how to twist the narrative, how to make me the bad guy in all of this. And for the first time in years, I saw her clearly. I wasn't looking at my wife. I wasn't looking at the woman I had built a life with. I was looking at a liar. A selfish, cruel, heartless liar who didn't even flinch when she got caught. She wasn't devastated. She wasn't crying. She wasn't scrambling to apologize. No, She was annoyed. Jenna sighed dramatically, crossing her arms. So what now? You're just kicking me out like I'm some stray dog. I took a slow breath through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. I don't care where you go, Jenna. You just can't stay here. She scoffed. Oh, come on, Mark. Don't be so dramatic. I blinked. Dramatic? Dramatic? I caught her having an affair with my stepfather, and I was being dramatic? She shook her head, letting out a bitter laugh. You're acting like I burned the house down. People cheat, Mark. It happens. It's not the end of the world. I felt my jaw clench so hard it hurt. I wasn't sure what was worse, the fact that she cheated or the fact that she felt nothing about it. No guilt. No remorse. Not even the decency to fake it. You're unbelievable, I muttered. She tilted her head. And you're naive. You really think people just stay in love forever? That's not how the world works. I stared at her, my stomach twisting in disgust. Then why did you marry me? Her lips parted like she wanted to answer, but for the first time, she hesitated. That was all I needed to see. I turned away, walking toward the staircase. Where are you going? She demanded. I didn't even look at her. Packing your things. She laughed. A cold, bitter sound. Oh, you're packing my things now? What, you think you're in some kind of revenge movie? I ignored her and took the stairs 2 at a time, my heart pounding with adrenaline. Every step felt surreal, like I was moving through a dream or a nightmare. The bedroom looked exactly the same as when I left for my trip earlier that day. The bed was still unmade from the morning. My suitcase, half-packed, was still lying open on the floor. Nothing had changed, except everything had changed. I grabbed one of Jenna's duffel bags from the closet and started shoving clothes into it. I didn't care what I grabbed. I didn't care if it was organized. I just wanted her out. I heard her footsteps behind me. Jesus, Mark, stop. I didn't stop. She grabbed my wrist, trying to yank the bag away. You don't get to throw me out of my own house. I wrenched my arm away, turning to face her. Our house, I corrected. And you just blew it all to hell. She rolled her eyes. You're so dramatic. If you weren't so uptight, maybe I wouldn't have needed to. I dropped the bag. Needed to what, Jenna? My voice was deadly quiet. Needed to cheat? Needed to screw my stepfather on the couch while you thought I was out of town. She flinched. For the first time, she flinched. Mark, that's not. No. Say it. I demanded, stepping closer. Say it out loud. Say what you did. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I could see the war happening in her head. She wanted to lie. She wanted to twist things. But she also knew she had no way out of this. Finally, she exhaled sharply. Fine. I cheated. Happy now. Happy. Happy? I let out a short, bitter laugh. That's what you think this is? That this is about me wanting to hear you say it? She threw up her hands. I don't know what you want from me, Mark. Do you want me to cry? Do you want me to beg? Do you want me to grovel? I stared at her, disgust curling in my stomach. I wanted you to love me. That shut her up. For the first time since this all started, she actually looked conflicted. But I was done. I picked up the duffel bag and shoved it into her arms. Get out. She hesitated. Mark, come on. Get out. She glared at me, her jaw tightening. You're being ridiculous. I laughed under my breath. And you're disgusting. Her eyes narrowed. Fine. She stormed toward the door, then paused, turning back to face me. You know what? You're gonna regret this. I promise you. You need me, Mark. You're not gonna last a week without me. I held her gaze, my voice calm. Then let's find out. She stood there for a moment longer, like she was waiting for me to break. I didn't. And finally, she turned and left. I waited until I heard the front door slam shut. And only then did I allow myself to breathe. I thought I'd feel relief. I thought I'd feel something. But all I felt was exhaustion. Like I had just crawled out of a burning wreckage, barely alive. But I wasn't done yet. Because Jenna? She wasn't gonna go quietly. And I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The house was silent. Too silent. I stood there in the bedroom, staring at the empty doorway where Jenna had just stormed out. Her words still echoing in my head. You're gonna regret this. You need me. You won't last a week without me. should have been funny. It should have made me laugh at the sheer delusion of it. But all I felt was a sick, heavy weight in my stomach, because I knew Jenna, and Jenna didn't lose. She didn't just walk away from things. She didn't admit defeat. She didn't let herself be thrown out like some disgraced mistress in an old movie. No, she fought. She manipulated. She made people suffer for daring to stand up to her. And I had just done the one thing she hated the most. I took control. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to shake off the dread creeping up my spine. I needed to clear my head. I needed to think. Jenna was gone, for now, but she wasn't done. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through my contacts. I needed to talk to someone. Someone who wasn't a backstabbing liar. My first instinct was to call my mom. But the moment that thought entered my head, I felt sick all over again. My mom. What the hell was I supposed to say to her? Hey, guess what? Your husband's been screwing my wife. Jesus. I dropped my phone onto the bed, exhaling sharply. That was a problem for another time. Right now, I needed to protect myself. Because Jenna? She wasn't just going to cry in a hotel room and lick her wounds. She was going to come back. And I had a terrible feeling she'd try to burn everything down on her way out. I left the bedroom, heading downstairs. The living room still looked exactly like it had when I walked in and caught them. The couch cushions were slightly askew. The throw blanket crumpled on the floor. A wine glass sitting on the coffee table with a smear of lipstick on the rim. My stomach turned. I grabbed the glass and hurled it into the sink. It shattered instantly, shards flying everywhere. The sound echoed through the house, sharp and violent, like a scream trapped in glass. I braced my hands on the counter, trying to steady my breathing. I needed to focus. I needed to think. First things first, I had to lock down everything. Jenna had keys to the house, to my car, to everything. I wasn't about to wake up tomorrow and find half my stuff missing or worse. Her back in the house, pretending like nothing happened. I grabbed my spare key set and went to the front door. First, I locked the deadbolt. Then, I reached into a drawer in the hallway and pulled out a screwdriver. It took me less than 2 minutes to remove the entire doorknob from the inside. She wasn't getting back in. I moved through the house, locking every window, every possible entrance. When I got to the garage, I stared at my car keys sitting on the counter and grabbed them before stuffing them into my pocket. No way in hell was she taking my car out of spite. And then, as I turned to leave, my phone buzzed. I froze. It was her. Of course, it was. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering in my ears. Jenna, we need to talk. No, we really didn't. I ignored it. 30 seconds later, another text. Jenna, don't do anything stupid, Mark. Seriously. I let out a short, humorless laugh. The audacity of this woman. Then, a third text. Jenna, you think you've won? You haven't. That one made something cold slither down my spine. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, debating whether or not to respond. She wanted me to engage. She wanted me to get sucked into whatever game she was playing. And the smartest thing I could do was ignore her. So I did. I turned off my phone and tossed it onto the counter. Let her stew. I wasn't playing her game anymore. The next morning, I woke up groggy and disoriented. The events of last night crashing back into me like a freight train. My body felt stiff, my head heavy, like I hadn't actually rested, just collapsed from exhaustion. And then, I noticed something. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I sat up slowly, my gut twisting. Something was off. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand and turned it on. 12 missed calls. 7 voicemails. And then one single text that made my blood freeze. Jenna, I told you not to do anything stupid. Have fun explaining this. My stomach flipped. What the hell did that mean? I threw off the covers and bolted out of bed, my heart racing as I moved through the house, looking for anything out of place. And then I saw it. The front door. The doorknob, the one I had removed, was back in place. And the door was slightly open. I swallowed hard, every nerve in my body on high alert. I stepped forward slowly, hesitantly, pushing the door open wider. And that's when I saw them. 2 police officers standing on my front porch. 1 male, 1 female, both with serious, unreadable expressions. Mark Reynolds? The male officer asked. I nodded slowly, my mouth suddenly dry. Yeah. The female officer glanced at her notepad. We received a call from your wife, Jenna Reynolds. She claims she was locked out of her home last night against her will, and that you've been threatening her. I felt my breath catch. No, 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 no. That bitch. She set me up. I opened my mouth to speak, to defend myself, but the male officer was already stepping forward. We just need to ask you a few questions. My hands curled into fists at my sides. This wasn't over. Jenna had just made her next move, and I had no choice but to play my hand carefully. I forced myself to stay calm. Panicking wouldn't help. Yelling wouldn't help. And the last thing I needed was to make myself look guilty in front of the cops. I stepped outside, hands at my sides, trying to keep my voice steady. You said Jenna called you? The male officer, the taller of the two, nodded. She claims you locked her out of the house and threatened her. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Threatened her? Jenna had spent years perfecting her victim act, and now she was using it against me. Classic. The female officer flipped through her notepad. She also mentioned you were acting erratically, breaking things, and that she feared for her safety. My jaw clenched. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was setting the stage. She wanted to paint me as the unstable, dangerous husband so that if this escalated, and it would escalate, she'd have the upper hand. I took a slow breath. Let me get this straight. My cheating wife, who I caught in our house with my stepfather, called you to say I'm the one acting irrationally. The male officer's expression didn't change. So you admit to removing the doorknob and locking her out? I crossed my arms. I removed the doorknob because I knew she'd come back to cause trouble. I asked her to leave. I didn't put my hands on her. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten her. The female officer studied me for a long moment. Do you have any proof of what happened last night? I almost grinned. Oh, Jenna, you really should have thought this through. I pulled out my phone. Yeah, I have everything recorded. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Everything. I nodded. The moment I walked in and caught them, I started recording. I have Jenna admitting to the affair. I have her laughing about it. I have her own words saying she felt bad but still did it anyway. I scrolled through my voice memos and tapped on the file. You want to hear it? The officers exchanged glances. The male one exhaled through his nose, looking mildly annoyed. Probably because he realized this wasn't the slam dunk case Jenna wanted it to be. The female officer nodded. Yes, play it. I hit play. Jenna's voice filled the quiet morning air. Oh my God, Rick, stop. If Mark ever found out, he'd kill us. Relax, sweetheart. He's halfway to Denver by now. I still feel bad, you know? I mean, he's so good to me. I don't want to hurt him. Rick's smug laugh followed. Oh, please. If you really felt bad, you wouldn't be sitting on my lap right now. And then, Jenna's laughter. The officers listened in silence. I could see the shift in their body language, the slight change in their posture, the realization that they had been called out for a fake domestic complaint. I let the recording play for another 30 seconds before pausing it. Does that sound like someone who's scared of me? The female officer cleared her throat, closing her notepad. It does paint a different picture, yes? The male officer, still looking annoyed, exhaled sharply. All right, look, we're gonna have to talk to Jenna. But if this is what really happened, then she's wasting our time. Wasting their time? That's all Jenna ever did. I nodded. So what happens now? The female officer pursed her lips. For now, nothing. But I'd strongly recommend getting legal protection. Maybe even a restraining order if you think she's going to escalate. Escalate. I already knew she was going to escalate. The male officer gave me a curt nod. We'll be in touch if we need anything else. And just like that, they left. I stood there on my porch, watching them go, feeling a mixture of relief and fury. Jenna really thought she could paint me as the villain here. She really thought she could turn this around on me. And the worst part? This was just the beginning. I went back inside, locking the door behind me. My heart was still pounding. I needed a plan. I needed to be 2 steps ahead of her, just like she had always been 2 steps ahead of me. I grabbed my phone and did something I never thought I'd have to do. I called a lawyer. An hour later, I was sitting in a quiet office, a cup of coffee growing cold on the desk in front of me. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Vanessa Grant, flipped through her notes, nodding as I told her everything. When I finished, she sat back in her chair, tapping her pen against the legal pad. So let me get this straight. Your wife cheated on you with your stepfather. You kicked her out. And now she's trying to frame you as abusive. I nodded. Vanessa let out a low whistle. Wow, that's some level of crazy. You're telling me. She leaned forward, lacing her fingers together. Okay, first things first, do not engage with her anymore. No calls, no texts, nothing. If she reaches out, you forward it to me. I exhaled slowly. She's not going to just go away. Vanessa gave me a knowing look. Oh, I know. Women like her, they don't go down without a fight. But here's the good news, you have proof that she's lying. That recording is gold. Proves that she wasn't scared of you. It proves she was bragging about the affair. I ran a hand down my face. Yeah, but what if she pulls something else? What if she tries to? Vanessa held up a hand. Mark, listen to me. You're ahead of her right now. Don't let fear make you reckless. The moment she tries something else, we document it. If she tries to come back to the house, we call the cops. If she makes more false claims, we hit her with a defamation suit. I nodded, but the anxiety in my gut didn't go away. Vanessa studied me for a moment, then softened slightly. Look, I get it. This is your life falling apart in real time. It's hell. But you're handling it the right way. Don't let her make you react emotionally. That's what she wants. She was right. Jenna wanted me to lash out. She wanted me to crack. That way, she could spin the narrative and make herself the victim. Not happening. Vanessa straightened her papers. I'll start drafting the divorce papers. But in the meantime, if she tries to contact you, do not respond. And if she pulls anything else, I call you first. I finished. She nodded. Exactly. I stood up, shaking her hand. As I walked out of the office and back into the bright afternoon sun, I realized something. Jenna thought she had control. She thought she could destroy me. But now, it was my turn to play the game. I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing for war. Jenna had made her move. She tried to get me arrested, tried to paint me as the abusive husband in some sick, twisted story where she was the victim. But it didn't work. I had proof. Proof that she was lying. Proof that she wasn't scared of me. Proof that she was laughing about screwing my stepfather on my couch. And now I was done playing defense. By the time I got home from the lawyer's office, I had a plan. I wasn't just going to sit around waiting for her next attack. I needed to protect myself. I needed to be ahead of her, not constantly reacting to the insanity she was throwing at me. First things first, I had to lock down my finances. Jenna and I had a joint bank account. A mistake in hindsight, but one I could still fix. I grabbed my laptop, logged in, and immediately transferred my direct deposits into a new private account under my name only. Then I checked the transactions. And my blood boiled. Because of course, Jenna had been bleeding our account dry. There were charges at expensive restaurants, hotels, shopping sprees. Thousands of dollars gone. Some of them lined up with the nights she claimed she was working late or out with the girls. And then I saw it. One transaction that made my stomach twist with pure rage. A hotel stay. On a night when I was home. She wasn't even trying to hide it. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. This was good. It was more proof of her betrayal, more ammunition for the divorce. I took screenshots of everything, saving them to a separate folder on my desktop and backing them up to a flash drive. Then I called the bank. The conversation was quick. I removed Jenna's access to our joint account, cut off her credit card, and changed all the security settings. From this moment on, she wasn't getting another damn dime from me. I sat back in my chair, exhaling. Step 1 done. Step 2, secure the house. I wasn't stupid. Jenna wasn't going to just walk away from this. She would try to come back. She would try to weasel her way in either through manipulation or by outright forcing her way inside. I wasn't letting that happen. I drove straight to a hardware store and bought new locks for every door. Then I stopped at an electronics store and picked up a set of security cameras. If Jenna tried anything, if she so much as set foot on my porch, I would have video evidence. By the time I got back, the sun was already setting. I spent the next 2 hours changing the locks, installing cameras, and making sure every single window was shut and locked tight. When I was done, I stood in the middle of my living room, heart still hammering. The house was empty, felt different now. Like I was standing in someone else's home, in someone else's life. Everything about this place had been ours. The pictures on the walls, the furniture, the stupid little decorations Jenna insisted on buying. And now it was just mine, and it felt foreign. I sank onto the couch, rubbing my hands over my face. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt like I was taking back control. But all I felt was exhausted, because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. And Jenna wasn't going to go down without a fight. I was right. The first sign of trouble came at exactly 2:13 a.m. I woke up to my phone vibrating on the nightstand. My heart was already pounding before I even checked the screen. Jenna. I let it ring. Seconds later, another call. Then another. And then a text. Jenna. Open the door. A chill ran down my spine. I sat up slowly, listening. The house was silent. But when I glanced at the security camera feed on my phone, my stomach dropped. She was standing on the porch. Jenna. In the middle of the night. Wearing an oversized hoodie, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked nothing like the smug, condescending woman I had thrown out yesterday. She looked off. Her arms were crossed tightly, her body shifting from foot to foot like she was either freezing or completely unhinged. And then she knocked. Bang, bang, bang. I clenched my jaw. Ignore her. Another text. Jenna. I just want to talk. I stared at the screen. Then another. Jenna. I know you're awake. My pulse quickened. I switched to the live camera feed. Jenna was smiling now. A slow, eerie smile. Like she knew she was getting under my skin. Then she did something that made my blood turn to ice. She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a key. I felt my entire body lock up. No. I changed the locks. I took her keys. There was no way she still had access to this house. And yet, she inserted the key into the lock and twisted. Click. My stomach dropped. She pushed the door open. The alarm system, thank God I set it up, immediately started screaming. A high-pitched, ear-shattering sound that ripped through the silence. Jenna jumped back, startled, her hands flying up. I bolted out of bed. By the time I got to the front door, Jenna was backing away, her face twisting in anger. You changed the locks, she spat. I stared at her, furious. No kidding. The alarm was still blaring. I grabbed my phone, quickly punching in the code to silence it. The ringing in my ears didn't stop. Jenna crossed her arms, shifting her weight. That's illegal, you know. You can't just lock me out of the house. I laughed. Actually laughed. Are you out of your damn mind? This isn't your house anymore, Jenna. You don't get to just waltz in here like nothing happened. Her eyes narrowed. I have a key. I glared at her. And I have security footage of you breaking in. You want to call the cops again? Go for it. This time, you'll be the one getting arrested. Something flickered across her face. Something like fear. Good. I took a step forward, lowering my voice. Where the hell did you get that key? She didn't answer. Instead, she took a slow step backward, her expression shifting again. This time into something more familiar. A smirk. Like she knew something I didn't. My stomach twisted. I'll be seeing you around, Mark, she murmured, before turning and walking off into the night. I stood there for a long time, watching her disappear down the street, my pulse pounding. I had won the first round. But Jenna? She wasn't playing fair. I barely slept after that. How could I? Jenna had broken into the house. My house. The place where I was supposed to feel safe. And the worst part? She acted like she still had every right to do it. Like I was the one who was being unreasonable for kicking her out after she blew up our marriage in the worst possible way. I spent the rest of the night sitting at the kitchen table, watching the security camera feed on my phone, half expecting her to come back. Every time I heard the faintest sound, wind against the window, the distant hum of a passing car, my body tensed. I was running on pure adrenaline. My hands curled into fists, my mind racing through how she had still managed to get inside. The locks were changed. I took her keys. So how? Then it hit me. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Mike Locksmith. Mike had changed the locks for me years ago, back when Jenna and I first bought the house. I hit call and pressed the phone to my ear, my leg bouncing restlessly as it rang. Mark. Mike's voice came through groggy. Dude, it's 6 in the morning. You better be calling me because your house is on fire. I let out a humorless laugh. Not quite, but close. Listen, I need to know. Do you keep copies of the keys you make? There was a pause. Then, no man. That's illegal as hell. Why? I ran a hand down my face. Because my ex-wife, who I threw out, just walked into my house in the middle of the night like she owned the place. And she had a key. Mike whistled. *T. That's bad. Yeah. So unless she's some kind of master locksmith, which, let's be real, she's not, the only other option is that someone gave her a copy. Mike was silent for a moment. Then he sighed. Look, I don't keep extra keys. But if she had access to the house before I changed the locks, she could have made a copy without you knowing. My stomach twisted. Of course. Jenna had probably done it months ago. Maybe even years ago, back when I actually trusted her. She must have kept a spare hidden somewhere, knowing that someday, it might come in handy. And now she was using it. I gritted my teeth. I need the locks changed again. Today. Yeah. I'll swing by in a few hours. Thanks. I hung up, my heart still pounding. This was insane. I had expected Jenna to be manipulative. I had expected her to be cruel. But this was another level. She planned this. She had a backup key, she waited until the dead of night, and she tested me to see how much control she still had. And when I shut her down, she just smirked, like she had another move ready to go. And I had no idea what it was. By noon, Mike had come and gone. The locks were changed again, but this time I took it a step further. Every entry point was now deadbolt. No keys. No chances. Jenna wasn't getting back in. I also installed another layer of security cameras. Ones that alerted me in real time if there was any movement outside. She wasn't going to surprise me again. And then, just when I thought I had finally gotten ahead of her, my phone buzzed. I checked the screen. A new email. From HR Department, Reynolds and Company. My hands clenched around the phone. I worked at Reynolds and Company. Jenna did not. So why the hell was my job's HR department emailing me? I tapped on the email, my eyes scanning the words. And then my blood went cold. Subject: urgent matter regarding your behavior. Mark, we have received a complaint regarding your conduct and need to discuss this matter immediately. Please report to HR by the end of the day. Failure to comply may result in further action. Sincerely, HR Department, Reynolds and Company. I sat there, staring at the screen, my brain short-circuiting. No. She didn't. I scrambled to my feet, my breath coming faster. I knew what this was. Jenna had tried and failed to get me arrested. Now she was trying to get me fired. I grabbed my keys and headed straight to the office. By the time I reached HR, my nerves were shot. My boss, Mr. Alden, was already waiting inside, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. The HR rep, a woman named Susan, gestured for me to sit. I didn't. What's this about? I demanded. Susan pursed her lips. We received a complaint from an anonymous source claiming that you have been exhibiting concerning behavior, hostility, erratic decision-making, and creating a toxic work environment. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. You think I'm the problem? Who exactly made this complaint? She hesitated. I can't disclose that. I clenched my jaw. Was it Jenna? Mr. Alden finally spoke. Mark. Because let me guess. I cut in. The complaint conveniently showed up right after I threw her out of the house? Susan sighed. Mark, we have to take these things seriously. And regardless of whether or not this is related to your personal life, we do need to evaluate the situation. I leaned forward, planting my hands on the desk. I have proof that my wife is trying to ruin me. You want to know what really happened? Here. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the audio recording of Jenna laughing about her affair. Then I played it. The room went dead silent. Susan's face turned pale. Mr. Alden rubbed his temples. When the recording ended, I looked at both of them. Does that sound like a victim to you? Mr. Alden exhaled sharply. Mark, I had no idea. I straightened. So what now? Susan looked uncomfortable. Obviously, this changes things. We'll review the complaint more carefully. I let out a humorless chuckle. Yeah, You do that. I walked out, my pulse still racing. Jenna had really tried to get me fired. And now I was done playing nice. I pulled out my phone and called Vanessa, my lawyer. The moment she picked up, I didn't waste time. Jenna just tried to get me fired. We're not waiting. File the divorce papers. And while you're at it, file a restraining order. Vanessa was silent for a beat. Then she let out a sharp exhale. Mark, I was hoping you'd say that. I gripped the steering wheel. Jenna wanted to play dirty? Fine. Game on. I left my office feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Jenna wasn't just trying to ruin my marriage. She was trying to burn my entire life to the ground. First, she tried to get me arrested. When that didn't work, she tried to make me homeless. And when I shut her out of the house for good, she went after my job. I had spent years building my career at Reynolds and Company. Late nights, early mornings, missing family gatherings just to meet deadlines. I was damn good at what I did, and I had earned my place there. And in a single day, Jenna tried to rip it away with some fabricated complaint. But she failed. Because now I wasn't just reacting. I was fighting back. I got in my car and immediately called Vanessa. She picked up on the second ring. Mark. She tried to get me fired, I said, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Vanessa sighed. I had a feeling she'd try something like that. I want the divorce papers filed now, I said. And a restraining order. I don't care what it takes. I want her out of my life permanently. Vanessa didn't hesitate. Consider it done. I'll have the paperwork ready by tomorrow morning. But Mark, she paused, like she was choosing her words carefully. You need to be prepared for what comes next. I frowned. What do you mean? She sighed. Jenna's the type who thrives on control. Right now, she's losing it, and when people like her lose control, they get dangerous. You've already seen what she's willing to do. And I promise you, she's not done yet. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Vanessa continued. She's going to escalate. Whether that means legal battles, false accusations, or something worse, I need you to be ready. I swallowed hard. I get it. Just tell me what I need to do. She exhaled sharply. Stay quiet. Don't give her anything she can use against you. No emotional responses, no angry messages. Nothing. If she reaches out, you ignore it and forward everything to me. And if she shows up again, I call the cops, I said. Exactly. I nodded. All right, get the papers ready. I'll call you in the morning. I hung up and rested my head against the seat, exhaling slowly. Jenna wanted to play games? Fine. I just changed the rules. That night, I barely slept. Again. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept picturing Jenna standing on my porch, smiling like she knew something I didn't. And the worst part? I had no idea what she was planning next. By morning, I had an email from Vanessa with the divorce papers attached. All I had to do was sign them, and she would handle the rest. I printed them out, grabbed a pen, and sat down at the kitchen table. And for a long time, I just stared at them. This was it. The end of everything I thought I had. The end of 6 years of my life, reduced to a stack of legal documents. I didn't miss Jenna. I didn't want her back. But something about seeing it all in black and white made my chest feel heavy. I sighed, shaking off the feeling. Then, without hesitation, I signed every single page. It was over. Or at least it should have been. 2 days passed. Silence. No calls. No texts. No Jenna showing up at my door in the middle of the night. And for a brief moment I thought, maybe she finally gave up. Maybe she realized she lost. Maybe she was actually going to let this go. And then on the third day I got a phone call. Not from Jenna. From my mother. I frowned at the screen before answering. Hey, Mom. There was silence on the other end. A long, shaky silence. Then, in a trembling voice, she said, Mark, honey, I need you to tell me the truth. I sat up straight, my pulse kicking up. What? What are you talking about? She let out a shaky breath. Jenna came by today. My stomach dropped. She was crying. My mom continued. She told me you kicked her out with nowhere to go. That you changed the locks. That you've been ignoring her calls. That you threatened her, Mark. I felt rage boil up in my chest. She what? I hissed. She said she was scared of you. My mom whispered, her voice breaking. Mark, did you really do that? I shot up from my chair, pacing the kitchen, my hands shaking. Are you serious right now, Mom? You're really going to believe her over me? I don't know what to think, she admitted. She looked so distraught. And then Rick. I froze. My blood turned to ice. What about Rick? I said, my voice dangerously calm. Mom hesitated. He was with her. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. He backed her up, she continued. He said you were acting unstable, that you were spiraling. I gripped the edge of the counter so hard I thought it would break. Of course Rick was helping her. The man who slept with my wife was now playing the concerned stepfather, pretending like I was the one losing it. It was a setup. Jenna wasn't just trying to ruin my job. She was trying to turn my own mother against me. I forced myself to breathe. Mom, listen to me. Everything she said is a lie. I caught her cheating. I have proof. I kicked her out because she betrayed me. And now, she's doing everything in her power to make me look like the bad guy. Mom was silent. I could tell she wanted to believe me, but Jenna had already sunk her claws in. I just don't understand, she whispered. Why would she lie about something like this? Because she has nothing left to lose. I snapped. She's desperate, Mom. She's trying to save face. She wants to play the victim so that when this divorce goes through, she can tell everyone that it wasn't her fault. Another silence. Then finally, you really have proof? I exhaled. Yeah, Mom. I have proof. A long pause. Then, softly, she said, okay. That one word made my chest loosen just slightly. I wasn't sure if she fully believed me yet, but at least she was listening. At least Jenna hadn't completely won. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about the divorce anymore. Jenna wanted everything. My house, my reputation, my family, and I was going to make damn sure she got nothing. I hung up the phone and just stood there, gripping the counter, trying to keep my breathing steady. Jenna was worse than I thought. Trying to get me arrested? Expected. Trying to get me fired? Predictable. But trying to turn my own mother against me? That was a new level of evil. And Rick, standing there beside her, backing up her lies, playing the role of the concerned stepfather? It made my stomach turn. I needed to end this. Now, I grabbed my keys and headed straight for my mom's house. 20 minutes later, I was standing at my mother's doorstep, forcing myself to take a deep breath before knocking. The door swung open almost immediately. She must have been waiting for me. She looked exhausted. Eyes red, shoulders tense, like she'd been crying. Mark, she said softly. Mom, I replied. For a long moment we just stood there, neither of us knowing how to start. Then she stepped aside, letting me in. The house smelled the same as it always had. Fresh coffee, a hint of cinnamon, like she had been baking something earlier. But despite the familiar scent, the entire atmosphere felt off. Jenna had been here. Jenna had poisoned this place with her lies. We sat in the living room. I could see the used tissues on the coffee table, proof that Jenna had put on one hell of a performance. Mom wrung her hands in her lap. Mark, I need to understand. I need to hear your side. I nodded, pulled out my phone, and pressed play. Jenna's voice filled the air. Oh my God, Rick, stop. If Mark ever found out, he'd kill us. Relax, sweetheart. He's halfway to Denver by now. I still feel bad, you know? I mean, he's so good to me. I don't want to hurt him. Then Rick's disgusting laugh. Mom's face crumbled. By the time the recording ended, she had both hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide and filled with horror. Oh my God, she whispered. I sat back, arms crossed. So, you still think she's the victim? She shook her head rapidly, looking sick. Mark, I didn't know. She made it sound so real. She was crying, saying she had nowhere to go, that she was afraid of you. I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah? And what about Rick? Did he look like he was scared of me? Mom closed her eyes tightly, like she was trying to erase the memory. He just kept saying you weren't handling things well, that you were spiraling. I clenched my jaw. And you believed him? She swallowed. I didn't want to, but I also didn't want to believe that he... Her voice caught and suddenly, She looked so much older than she had a few days ago. She shook her head, almost like she was trying to shake off the pain. I married a monster, she whispered. I sighed. Yeah, you did. She covered her face with her hands, taking a long, shuddering breath. I feel like an idiot. You're not an idiot, Mom, I said, my voice softer now. You were played, just like me. She sniffled, nodding slightly. I need to leave him, she said. I can't stay with him after this. Something inside me unclenched. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I actually felt like I had won something. I reached out, squeezing her hand. I'll help you, I said. Whatever you need. Just say the word. She looked up at me, and I could see the pain in her eyes, but I could also see resolve. She nodded. Then she whispered, What do we do now? I exhaled slowly. Now we end this. The next morning I called Vanessa. I need to add something to the divorce case, I said the moment she picked up. What's that? She asked. I took a breath. Infidelity. There was a pause. Then, do you have proof? I grinned coldly. Oh yeah, I have proof. By the afternoon, Jenna was served. She called me 6 times before I finally picked up. The moment I answered, she screamed into the phone. Are you serious, Mark? Infidelity? You're going to try and take everything from me over one mistake. One mistake, I repeated, laughing under my breath. Jenna, you spent months sneaking around with my stepfather. You're lucky I'm not suing you for emotional damages. You're a psycho, she spat. You're obsessed with punishing me. No, Jenna, I said coldly. I'm obsessed with making sure you never get to screw me over again. She let out a bitter, humorless laugh. You're not going to win this. You think you're smarter than me? I always get what I want, Mark. Always. I leaned back in my chair, smirking. Not this time. She sucked in a sharp breath, and for the first time, I heard something in her voice that wasn't arrogance. I heard fear. I hung up, and for the first time in weeks, I felt free. The next few weeks were a battlefield. Jenna didn't go quietly. I knew she wouldn't. She fought dirty, just like I expected. First, she tried to stall the divorce, claiming she needed time to process everything. Vanessa shut that down immediately. Your client cheated, manipulated, and attempted to frame my client for abuse. She doesn't get to drag this out just because she doesn't like the consequences. Then she tried to get alimony. That made me laugh out loud when Vanessa told me. She thinks she can cheat on me, destroy my life, and then expect me to pay her? I said. Vanessa smirked. She can want it all she wants. But guess what? Since you filed under infidelity, she's entitled to nothing. Judges don't look kindly on spouses who blow up their marriages and then demand a paycheck. Jenna must have realized that, too, because she backed off fast. But she wasn't done yet. A week later, I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Can we meet? Just once, please? I stared at the message, my jaw tightening. It was her. Of course, it was. I should have ignored it. I wanted to ignore it. But something inside me, curiosity, closure, maybe just the need to see her face when she realized she had lost, made me type back. Me where? Unknown. The cafe on 5th. In an hour. I exhaled slowly, tossing my phone on the table. One last meeting. And then, she would be nothing to me. When I walked into the cafe, Jenna was already there, sitting in the back corner. She looked different. Not in a good way. Her hair was messy, her makeup slightly smudged, like she had thrown herself together at the last second. She wasn't wearing the smug, confident expression she usually had. She looked desperate. I took my time walking over, sat down across from her, didn't say a word. She fidgeted with the coffee cup in front of her. You actually came, she murmured. I crossed my arms. Make this quick, Jenna. She exhaled sharply, looking down at her hands. Then, in a tiny voice, she said, I miss you. I blinked, then laughed. Are you serious? She flinched. You miss me, I said, my voice sharp with disbelief. You destroyed us, Jenna. You burned everything to the ground. And now you miss me. Her eyes filled with tears. Mark, No. I cut her off. You don't get to cry. You don't get to play the victim. You did this. She wiped her eyes quickly, straightening. I know I messed up. Okay? But She swallowed hard. I thought I didn't love you anymore. I let out a bitter laugh. And screwing Rick made you realize that was a lie? She winced. It wasn't like that. Oh, it wasn't? I leaned forward. Then tell me, Jenna, what was it like? She looked away. I don't know. I was lost. I shook my head. You weren't lost, Jenna. You were selfish. She stayed silent. For the first time, I saw something new in her. Not anger, not arrogance, regret. But regret wasn't enough. I stood up. This conversation is over. She grabbed my wrist. Mark, please. I love you. I pulled my arm free, staring down at her. No, Jenna. You love winning. But this time, I smiled coldly. You lost. I turned and walked out, and I didn't look back. 2 months later, the divorce was finalized. Jenna got nothing. No house, no money, no sympathy. Rick, my mother left him. She didn't even let him fight for the marriage. She just packed her things and left. He tried to reach out, but she shut him down. He lost everything. And me? I was free. I rebuilt my life piece by piece. It wasn't easy. Some nights, I still lay awake, replaying everything, wondering how I had been so blind. But then, I'd remind myself, I got out. I won. And Jenna? She was nothing but a bad memory.